Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
I found out my father died the same way I found out he left me nothing, through a damn group text from my cousin Kelly, who's never spelled my name right in her entire life. Uncle Rob passed early this morning. Heart stopped in his sleep. Peaceful. Love y'all. That was it. No call, no warning, just 23 words and a little dove emoji that somehow made it worse. I sat there staring at my phone like it had just slapped me, like maybe if I refreshed it, something different would pop up. Something personal. But no. Just the silence I'd come to expect from a family that always seemed to forget I was still around until they needed someone to book the Airbnb for Thanksgiving or organize a Zoom call for Dad's birthday. I didn't cry right away. That part came later. At first, I felt nothing. Just a dull pressure behind my eyes, like a migraine that hadn't made up its mind yet. I poured myself a cup of coffee I didn't want, sat on the edge of the couch, and stared out the window while the neighbor's sprinklers ticked on. It was all just so normal. Too normal. My father was dead, and I still had to answer emails, feed the cat, and remember to take the trash bins out before Friday. The funeral was 3 days later. Closed casket. No real reason for it, other than the fact that Dad always said, "I want people to remember me alive, not looking like a wax dummy in a rented box." I respected that. I even chuckled a little when I heard the minister mispronounce our last name. Morrison became Morrissine, which, I swear to God, would have made Dad throw his ashes across the room if he could have. Danny, my younger brother, didn't laugh. He stood up front, all solemn in his tailored suit, nodding along like he'd lost his best friend instead of a man who barely knew how to say, "I'm proud of you," without choking on the words. It was after the service, at Aunt Diane's house, where the real gut punch landed. We were all crowded into her weirdly hot living room, plastic plates on our laps, pretending that store-bought potato salad meant everything was going to be okay. That's when Danny stood up, clinked his glass like it was a damn wedding toast, and said, "So, Dad's lawyer sent me the final version of the will. It's done. It's all going through probate, but the main stuff is clear." I remember feeling a small jolt in my stomach. I didn't expect much, maybe some books, an old jacket, something stupid and sentimental. But what came out of Danny's mouth wasn't just a slap, it was a full-on kick in the ribs. Dad left the house, the car, his retirement accounts, and all remaining savings to me. He specified that Sarah wouldn't receive anything because, and I quote, "she doesn't need it. She'll be fine." That room got real quiet, real fast. I laughed. Not a sweet, surprised laugh. No, the kind of laugh that sounds like it's being dragged out of your lungs with a rusty hook. I looked around, waiting for anyone, to jump in, to say there had been a mistake, that it didn't mean what it sounded like. But nobody said a word. Not even Aunt Diane, who once called me the responsible rock of the family after I organized Grandpa's funeral while Danny was still recovering from his third failed business. I stood up, told everyone I was heading out, left my half-eaten plate on the side table, and didn't even say goodbye. I didn't cry in the car either. Just stared at the dash, gripping the steering wheel like I might tear it off. What the hell does "you'll be fine" even mean? I mean, sure, on paper I was fine. I owned a small graphic design business that actually turned a profit, I didn't have any kids sucking my bank account dry, and I'd paid off my student loans before I turned 35. But fine doesn't mean not human. Fine doesn't mean I don't feel things. Fine doesn't mean I deserved nothing. Danny, the golden boy, had spent years making bad decisions in high-end packaging. Failed startups, bad marriages, a lease on a BMW he couldn't afford, and somehow, Dad always bailed him out. He was the baby, and babies always need saving, right? Meanwhile, I was the one who handled Dad's prescriptions when Mom passed. I was the one who paid off the plumber when the pipes burst at the cabin. I was the one who sat in that hospice room for 2 straight nights so Danny could take a mental break. But apparently, fine meant I was invisible. I went home and opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. Turns out betrayal counts. I sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through old emails from Dad, looking for anything that might explain this. Most were short. Weather updates, links to articles he thought I'd like, one about some scientist making whiskey on Mars. Then I saw it. A message from 4 years ago with the subject line, cabin tax info. My stomach flipped. I opened it. Inside, just a link to a Dropbox folder and the words, "Thought you might need this someday. Don't lose it." I clicked through, not expecting much. Just forms, receipts, maintenance notes. But then, there it was, a scan of the original deed. The summer cabin. The one place that still felt like home. The one place we went every year like clockwork until Mom died and everything fell apart. And there, at the bottom of the deed, was a detail I hadn't expected. It was still in Dad's name. Never transferred. Never mentioned in the will. I sat back in my chair, heart racing just a little, and thought, so you forgot one thing, old man. And that one thing? It was the only thing I gave a damn about. I thought I was done crying over my dad. Then I found the cabin deed. It's strange how the deepest wounds don't come from what people do to you, but from what they choose not to do, what they leave undone, unspoken, and signed. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after I found that email, staring at the words like they might rearrange themselves into an apology, maybe even some kind of admission that he had known, deep down, that he owed me something. Not money, not property, not even fairness. Just acknowledgement. Just the damn decency to look at me once before he died and say, "I see what you've done for this family. I see you." But no, he'd done the opposite. In death, just like in life, Dad made a show of practicality. A man of reason, a man of structure. And yet, here it was, the one thing he forgot. That cabin. That beautiful, falling apart, mosquito-ridden, paint-peeling, heartstring-tugging cabin by the lake that we spent every summer in like it was our sacred ritual. And somehow he'd never updated the deed. Never added Danny's name. Never added mine either. Just left it. Like he couldn't bring himself to touch it, like it was frozen in time, untouchable. The deed wasn't in any fancy file or lawyer's safe or fireproof box. It was in an old manila envelope stuffed behind the drawer of an antique desk that used to be Mom's. The drawer stuck, the wood swollen from age and humidity, and I had to jimmy it loose with a butter knife because I couldn't find the screwdriver. That felt fitting, somehow. Fighting a drawer to open a door to the past. Inside was a mess of receipts, yellowing photos, an old paperclip bracelet I'd made for Mom when I was maybe 10, and then right at the bottom, there it was. Folded over, fragile at the edges. A property deed. My name not on it, Danny's name not on it, just Dad's. And since he died intestate on the cabin, without including it in the will, it would, by state law, be split between the next of kin. Which meant me. And him. Danny. The moment I realized that, something shifted in my chest. A crack, maybe. A quiet snap of something I didn't know had been holding on. For years, I'd let things slide. I was the reasonable one, the one who understood that Dad didn't know how to say, "I love you," unless it came with a spreadsheet or a life insurance policy. But I wasn't letting this slide. Not this time. I sat back, clutching the deed like it was a map out of hell. I closed my eyes and the memories came fast, faster than I expected. The way the cabin smelled after a summer storm, like wet pine needles and smoke. The way Mom used to sing while flipping pancakes in that stupid chip skillet. The rusty swing tied to the big oak tree that had flung Danny face first into the bushes more times than I could count. I remember how we'd sleep on the screened-in porch when it got too hot inside, how Dad used to make us bait our own hooks and then yell when we didn't clean the fish right. There were about 50 memories in that place. 50, maybe even 65. I don't know, I'm bad at math. But they weren't just memories, they were pieces of me. Pieces of a family that only really made sense inside those 4 wooden walls, away from bills and jobs and hospitals and disappointments. Inside that cabin, for a few weeks every year, we were whole. Or at least, I thought we were. And now it was mine. Or half mine. But in my bones, I knew Danny wouldn't care about the legalities. He'd think of it as his. Because that's what he'd been taught. That he deserved things just by showing up. That he could be a screw-up and still be first in line when things got handed out. That Sarah, big sister, responsible, boring, successful Sarah, would always step aside. But not this time. This time, he was going to watch me take something for myself. And if it hurt him, well, he could add that to the list of things he needed help bouncing back from. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't call Danny. I called Karen, an old friend from college who now sold real estate out near the lake. She was blunt, fast, and had a voice like a cigarette ad from the 70s. I told her I wanted to list the cabin immediately. She asked if I was sure. I said yes before she could finish the sentence. She told me to send her the paperwork. I told her I already had it scanned. By morning, she'd sent me the draft listing, a blur of warm wood paneling and sunset lake photos. We priced it low enough to get attention fast, but high enough to make Danny's blood pressure spike. Just under $400,000. A steal for lakefront property, even if the dock leaned a little and the toilet still needed a wrench to flush. I drove out there myself to put up the sign. Just me, a hammer, and a bright red placard that said for sale in big, unapologetic letters. I didn't wait until the weekend. I didn't wait for the will to finish probate. I didn't wait for the flowers on Dad's grave to wilt. I stood at the edge of the gravel driveway, slammed that sign into the ground like I was planting a flag on the moon, and for the first time in years, I felt something. Not peace, not joy, but power, control. I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. The call came in at 7:43 in the morning, which already told me everything I needed to know before I even picked it up, because Danny never called that early unless someone was dead, drunk, or demanding something. I stared at the screen for a second, coffee still in hand, and considered letting it go to voicemail. I knew this wasn't going to be the kind of call that ended with "Thanks, love you, talk soon." It was going to be shouting, guilt, accusations, and that same old tone he always used when he realized the world wasn't bending to his needs fast enough. I answered on the fourth ring, already bracing myself for whatever version of "how could you" he was about to throw. You can't ****ing do this. He barked before I even had time to say hello. His voice came through sharp and tight, like he'd been holding his breath since the moment he saw the listing. I could hear traffic in the background, probably calling me while weaving through the express lanes in that stupid leased Audi he swore he was going to buy out and never did. "Good morning to you too," I said, calm as a nun on Sunday, sipping my coffee like I wasn't already imagining 10 different ways I could hang up and never talk to him again. "I'm serious, Sarah," he said, louder now. "You can't sell the cabin. That's our family place. It's Mom's legacy, for God's sake." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was the most ridiculous, convenient piece of emotional blackmail I'd heard in years. The legacy card, thrown by the guy who hadn't set foot in that place in over 15 years, unless you count the one time he brought his ex-wife for a photo op and left after 2 hours because there wasn't any Wi-Fi and the bed gave him a sore back. "Funny," I said, standing up and walking to the window, watching a squirrel try to drag half a slice of pizza up a tree. "You didn't seem that interested in Mom's legacy when you were too busy jetting off to Tulum with Chelsea during Dad's chemo." There was a pause, just long enough for me to imagine his jaw tightening, his free hand curling into a fist like he used to do as a teenager when he got caught lying. "That's low," he said. "You don't know what I was dealing with back then." I didn't even respond to that. Because I did know. He was dealing with himself. With his ego. With trying to prove he wasn't the disappointment everyone thought he was, except Dad never thought that. Dad just kept handing him lifelines, as if one more bailout check might finally turn Danny into the man he was supposed to be. "You got everything," I said finally, after a long silence. "You got the house, the bank accounts, the car, the retirement plan. I didn't even get AF asterisk 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 ing tie. You didn't need it, he shouted, his voice cracking now, like the edge of desperation had started to cut through his fury. You've always been the one who had her SH asterisk T together. The one with a business, with savings, with a plan. Dad knew you'd be okay. I could feel something rising in me, something old and jagged, something that had been sitting under my ribs for years, just waiting for the right moment to dig its way out. And what, that makes it fair? I snapped. That makes it okay that I spent the last 6 months wiping Dad's mouth, fighting with insurance companies, sleeping in hospital chairs, while you were on some F asterisk 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 ing yacht posting pictures with hashtags like living my best life. There was another silence, heavier this time. I pictured him sitting in his car, knuckles white on the steering wheel, trying to find a comeback that would make me shut up and crawl back into the role I'd always played. The fixer, the smoother-over, the big sister who handled everything so no one else had to. You're doing this to hurt me, he said quietly, like he was trying to turn it into a truth by saying it out loud. You're selling the cabin just to hurt me. I took a deep breath. The sun was rising higher now, casting gold stripes across the hardwood floor of my kitchen. My coffee had gone cold. My hand was steady. And, for the first time in my life, I didn't deny it. You're damn right I am, I said. Because you need to learn what it feels like to lose something that matters. You need to know what it's like to be told you don't count, not because you failed, but because someone decided you'd be fine. He didn't yell after that. He didn't argue. He just hung up. No goodbye. No last word. Just the sound of the line going dead in my ear, like a door slamming shut after decades of standing cracked open. I stared at my phone for a moment, then set it down gently on the table. And I didn't feel sorry. Not one bit. Because all my life, I had let things go for the sake of keeping peace, for the sake of family, for the sake of not making things worse. But this time, the war had already started. And I was finally firing back. The morning of the viewing came fast, and I felt strangely calm, like the kind of calm that doesn't come from peace, but from having already walked through the storm and realized there's no shelter coming anyway, so you might as well stand tall and let the rain hit your face. Karen pulled up in her SUV 10 minutes early, wearing a bold red blazer, sunglasses like mirrors, and that kind of no-nonsense confidence I'd always admired and never had the guts to fully fake. She handed me a coffee without asking how I took it, said the photographer had made the cabin look like a damn restoration hardware spread, and asked if I wanted to stay or vanish while the buyers came through. I told her I'd stay. I wasn't hiding. Not from the looky-loose, not from the city people dreaming of lake vibes, not even from the ghosts I was about to evict. The cabin looked better than I remembered, which somehow made it worse. Karen had brought in someone to do a quick stage, just enough to make it look intentional, lived in, without robbing it of its personality. The old rocking chair stayed on the porch, the wood-burning stove still stood stubborn and black in the corner, and the faded canoe photo of Mom and Dad from '87 hung above the fireplace like it never knew what betrayal smelled like. The first family arrived right on time. A couple from Madison with 2 young kids and a golden retriever who waited politely in the car. The mom said the cabin had soul, and the dad said he could see them making real memories here. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood, because that was the exact kind of phrase people used when they didn't know what it took to build a memory worth keeping. The kind made of pancakes on Sunday mornings, mosquito bites that turned into battle scars, arguments about board games that turned into silence, and silence that turned into something even heavier than noise. More people came, and offers started flying before the open house even ended. Karen was thrilled. I was not. I stepped outside after the second couple complimented the vintage charm, sat on the old dock, and looked out across the lake like it could answer something I hadn't figured out how to ask. The water was calm, still. That fake kind of still that makes you think it's safe to swim, right before it pulls you under. I ran my fingers along the dock's edge, feeling the grooves in the wood where weather and time had left their mark, and then I saw it, carved into the planks near the end, so faint you could miss it if you weren't looking. S+D, summer of '98. I traced it with my fingertip like it might still hold warmth. That was the year Danny broke his arm falling out of the swing we begged Dad to fix. The year Mom made blackberry pie from scratch, and we ate it straight out of the pan with spoons. The year I thought family meant forever. I must have sat there 20 minutes, maybe more, before I heard his car tires on the gravel. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I knew it was him from the way the door slammed, too hard for a man who said he just wanted to talk. But when he walked up behind me, he didn't yell. He didn't rage. He didn't throw words like knives. He just looked tired. Like life had finally caught up to the image he kept trying to project. "Don't erase Mom," he said, voice low and tight like it hurt to say the words. "Please, Sarah. I know I've screwed up 100 different ways, and I know you think I didn't care, but this was hers too. She loved this place." I didn't say anything right away, because part of me wanted to scream at him that she was the only one who made it bearable. That she was the only one who saw me, who thanked me, who hugged me like she meant it. That she was the one who held this family together while the men in it broke everything they touched. But she was gone. And so was the girl who needed Danny to understand that. "I'm not erasing her," I said finally, standing up and brushing the dirt off my jeans. "She's the only reason I waited this long. You think this is about Mom? No. This is about Dad. About what he left behind, what he didn't say, what he thought I didn't deserve." Danny opened his mouth, closed it, and looked down at the dock. I wondered if he saw the carving, if he remembered it, if he even had the capacity to feel the weight of what I was carrying. "I know I don't deserve it," he said, barely above a whisper. "But I don't want to lose it." "You already did," I said, and the words didn't come from anger, they came from truth. Pure, cold, undeniable truth. I walked back to the cabin and signed the papers that afternoon. Karen said the final offer came in just under $400,000, more than we expected. Less than it was worth. Priceless, really, but I was done trying to assign value to things that only meant something to people too late to hold on to them. I didn't call Danny again. Didn't tell him who bought it. Didn't explain why I chose the couple with the dog over the tech guy who offered cash and wanted to gut the interior. I didn't know him that. Hell, I didn't know him anything anymore. Because while he mourned a memory, I had been living the erasure. I had been the one crossed out, left off the will, left out of the conversations, left to be fine while everyone else got to fall apart and be forgiven for it. And now? I wasn't fine. But I was free. I deposited the check 2 days after the papers were signed, and the moment it cleared, I transferred Danny his half without hesitation, without ceremony, without even a subject line in the email that sent him the notification. Just the raw, ugly math of our shared bloodline divided down the middle and turned into cold, digital numbers. It felt mechanical, transactional, like paying off a debt you didn't remember taking on in the first place. I watched the money leave my account and didn't feel relief or satisfaction, just a blank space where maybe guilt was supposed to sit, but didn't. He didn't reply. Not a text. Not a call. Not even a snide little jab or a passive-aggressive emoji, which was unlike him and somehow more painful than if he'd come screaming. I kept checking my inbox out of habit, like some part of me still expected him to show up with a speech, a tantrum, or a demand. But he stayed silent, and that silence said more than any tirade could have. The world kept moving in that strange way it does after everything changes. The dog across the street still barked at the mailman every morning. The woman at the coffee shop still asked if I wanted oat or almond milk, even though I always said oat. My work kept coming in, emails to answer, logos to design, timelines to meet. But it all felt like background noise, like I was moving through the shell of a life I used to live before something inside cracked open and I let the cold air in. Then, almost a full month later, the letter arrived. A real one with a stamp and a postmark and his handwriting on the envelope, sloppy and jagged like he'd written it leaning on a car hood. Inside, Just one line on a torn sheet of notebook paper. I hope you're proud. No greeting. No signature. No effort to hide the bite behind those words. Just a naked accusation, neatly folded and delivered to my front door like a curse. I read it 3 times before setting it down on the counter beside my keys. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even tear it up, which surprised me. I just stood there staring at it, feeling that strange, shapeless ache of someone trying to make you feel bad for finally choosing yourself. Was I proud? Yes. And also, not at all. The morning before the keys were handed over, I drove out to the cabin one last time. The new owners had asked for a clean handoff, no surprises, no lingering items, no emotional baggage stuffed into the back of a closet, which, fair enough. They wanted a fresh start. They deserved that. But I needed to say goodbye, not to the building, but to the parts of myself still hanging in its corners. It was overcast when I arrived, the lake covered in that soft gray light that makes everything look like it's waiting. I walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, running my hands over the banister, kneeling down to tighten a loose screw on the floorboard near the kitchen out of sheer habit. When I got to the small bedroom at the back, the one that used to be mine when I was little, I felt something shift underfoot. It was faint, but it was there. The creak wasn't where it should have been, and curiosity pushed me to pull up the board. I used the edge of a spoon from the drawer, somehow still there, warped and scratched from 100 stirrings of instant coffee and canned chili, and pried it open. Beneath the floorboard was a small, dusty box wrapped in a faded cloth napkin that still smelled faintly of lavender and thyme. Inside the box, tucked carefully between old postcards and one yellowed movie stub from a drive-in, was a photo of me as a kid, missing a front tooth, smiling so hard my eyes squinted, curled up next to Mom on the porch swing, her arm around my shoulder like I was the most precious thing she'd ever held. And under the photo, a note in Dad's handwriting. Just 6 words, penned in his tight, exact print. This was always yours, you know. I sat down on the floor and held that photo like it might disappear if I blinked too hard. My heart didn't swell. It didn't shatter. It just settled. Like it had been searching for something to anchor to and finally found it in 6 stupid words written by a man who had spent most of his life trying not to say what he really meant. I didn't tell Danny about the box. I didn't send him a picture or quote the note back to him in some poetic act of closure. I didn't use it as leverage or as a peace offering or as a final twist in a story we were both too tired to keep telling. I didn't need to, because this was mine. Not out of revenge. Not out of spite. But because it always had been, even if he and Dad never said it out loud, even if I had to find it buried under a floorboard like some kind of emotional time capsule. The new family pulled up 10 minutes before the handoff. I stood in the driveway, watching the kids leap out of the back seat with the kind of reckless joy only people untouched by grief can manage. The mom smiled at me, that polite, excited smile of someone about to make a house into a home, and I handed her the keys with a steady hand. She said something about being grateful, about keeping the place's charm, and I nodded like I heard every word, even though the lake behind me was louder somehow, pulling me toward it with that old, familiar hum. I took one last look at the cabin as they walked inside, the door swinging open with a creak that sounded more like an exhale than anything else. And then I turned, climbed into my car, and drove off. Maybe I was leaving it behind. Or maybe, just maybe, I was finally taking it with me.